First up, from Connecticut DOT, Edgardo Block. Ed has continually worked in pavement since 1989. He leads the Performance Management Unit at the Connecticut DOT, where he has also spent 21 years in pavement management and research. He also worked in private-public partnerships overseas and consulting engagements in the U.S. Ed has been president of the Northeast Pavement Preservation Partnership and currently chairs the TRB Standing Committee on Pavement Management System. Ed is a civil engineer from University of Connecticut, class of 1989, and completed an MBA at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in 2004. Ed is a fortunate husband since 1994 and a proud father since 2012. Ed, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Heath, and thank you everybody for making it to a morning session. I took a snapshot on that I can't even pronounce it, Huva application and sent it to my wife of my bio, and she was laughing all evening about it. It's sort of, it's a little embarrassing that way. And I'd also like to start with a disclaimer. I work at a state agency for a long time, and I like to have a disclaimer that's sometimes state and sometimes not, and it's about job satisfaction. And when I'm asked, anything positive I say about how I like my job doesn't mean I don't want to raise. And I would like to tell that to Steve, is that anything that I like, that I say that I like about the performance management framework doesn't mean I don't want a higher funding level. I think we really need it. So having that out of the way, I really would like to give a shout out to Eric Thibodeau. He was the winner of the Jim Sorensen Award. And he was supposed to be here in the panel, and he couldn't make it, so that's why I'm here. But for this session, it fits perfectly. I've moved on to performance management, so I've been doing that for the last year and got a new appreciation for the importance and the intelligence of having a performance management framework for our transportation asset management, our transportation assets. So, having said all that, I wanted to make a presentation that talk about 3 points, 3 things that we see that we're going to have to deal with under the MAP 21/FAST Act requirements. So if you don't remember anything else, those are the 3 bullets to write down. So when you use pavement preservation for any funding level, you get a higher network condition. That's just, if you play it out, and I'll show you a graph, because that's one of the takeaways. You're making good pavement stay in good condition. If the funding is not sufficient, however, the percent of poor payments increases more than if you do worse first. Right? So over the short term, if you're spending the right treatment to the right road at the right time, you're letting some go. And that means your percent poor goes up. So that's one challenge that you have in one aspect of the rulemaking that we have to deal with. That's because there are lower benefit to cost ratios for fixing worse first. So that's kind of just what happens when you run through the numbers. In the process of putting together the asset management plan with our consultant in Connecticut, we did play this scenario out. We created a worst first treatment, put it into our pavement management system, and had and this is one particular scenario I wanted to show you, that the black line is with maximum benefit cost, meaning it's a comprehensive preservation strategy. If you have extra money, or if has rehab treatments and reconstruction as well. But at this funding level, it really prioritizes preservation. The dotted red line is a reactive, or you only do the worst first and then the rehabs. And look at the network condition. Now these numbers may not look that striking on a graph like this, but when you put numbers to them, it's a lot of money that we're saving by using preservation. And when you look at the investment in doing things with pavement preservation, we went at the Asset Management Conference in Minneapolis as an NCHRP project dealing with the cost-benefit ratio of using asset management, but it really is all the investment you put into hiring staff and getting data collection equipment, and you can play that out for 10 years, and then you save money in one project and you get all the money back. And the numbers they get for benefit cost ratio are pretty astounding. They're in the order of 15, 20, 25 to 1. When you look at the investment you make in doing things the right way. So that's just something you cannot escape. And the dollars add up, and if you don't use preservation, you can't catch up very well. At the Northeast Pavement Preservation Partnership, the Connecticut report included what we spent on paving in 2015 and 16. That's reflected in here, and that's why you see a bump. I like to explain those bumps because they seem to be like it's real data and then it's made up data. Well, it's forecasted that way, but in 2015 and 16, we are spending a lot of money in paving in Connecticut. You know, it's completely an outsized program. So that explains that little bump. So now you can focus on the rest of the graph and hopefully believe it. So in that exercise, you see at the same funding level with preservation, your good and excellent pavements are higher. Right? So this is what we've put into the system, so we expect that answer to come back to us if the system is telling us the truth. The other two, the hybrid with a mix of treatments where you do a little preservation, and the reactive, they don't do as well in this area. But the upshot is that the poor pavements go up faster because the pavement is gone, you let it go. Right? There's a little idea there I'm going to come back to at the very end, because it's the third point, but the percent poor is something to worry about, and it's not the only goal, but it is included in the MAP 21 rule. Now I'll show you, this is from our own performance measures that we have at the Connecticut DOT, and we picked IRI because it was just the consistency in the data was nice to explain. But we used to have the NHS be a lot more interstates and expressways. When it was expanded, it included a lot of functional class 3, other principal arterials. In Connecticut, those are the ones that are really urban with high roughness. But our preservation program has focused on high volume roadways. And you see and we began the preservation program basically in 2009, and then it has gone on. This is data through when we changed the definitions. But this is what you see and how I have explained the impact of preservation on your network. So the bottom part of the chart is the percent poor, and that holds constant. And then the good is at the top, and that's increasing, and the fares are dropping. That's what's supposed to happen, I think, when you use preservation. That's what I would expect to happen, and it does. I preserve, therefore my goods are getting better. I'm holding the poors, and the fares I'm catching. That's a good outcome. That's what I want to see out of my pavement management system, at least me. And then on the rest of the network, even though there was also a difference at the end, but when you do worse first, what holds constant is your percent very good, because you're paving the same number of miles, let's say. But the poors are shooting up because the fares are falling into the poor category. So that's not what you want to see. Now this is real data from 2006 to 2013, and as I wanted to show you, to make the first point with real data, is that your good in pavements increase, but your poor increase as well when you don't have enough funding. So funding levels on network condition. So with a pavement management approach and a preservation program, higher funding levels equals a higher average condition. With sufficient funding, the backlog can be addressed. But insufficient funding could impact the minimum condition levels on the MAP 21. This is our interstate and expressway average pavement condition index. We have a scale of 1 to 9. Don't ask me why, but that's the way it was set up in Connecticut, so we use it. That's our projection at different funding scenarios. And you see that with more funding, you can get better results. At the very end, even it says $100 million dollars a year for the interstates and expressways, and you see that line doesn't quite follow the other ones, and that's because the rules of our pavement management system don't allow it to spend that much money. So you don't actually spend $100 million, and you don't get that benefit. But that's like an upper limit. So that's pretty standard. But at funding levels, the percent poor, when you don't have enough funding, you get a backlog of percent poor. So you have to deal with it. And that's the third point, that you have to deal with the percent poor, and you may have to do it. If you want to sustain performance, you're going to have to look at your funding levels, and if they're not enough, you have to have a contingency plan for those poor pavements on the interstates to meet the 5% that's built right into the law, basically. So that's the third point. The way we've addressed it in our long-term plan in Connecticut is that in my pavement management system tells me how many miles of pavement are falling into the poor, and I can assign a Band-Aid funding source to just address that and plan for that and minimize that, and then the rest of it, spend it with a maximum benefit cost ratio, which basically means implementing pavement preservation. So that was my first point, that you get a lot of bang for the buck by doing preservation. And that's basically what I wanted to show you about what we see as the biggest challenges in the MAP 21 and what we're looking at in terms of addressing the requirements.